my time elsewhere, not just in the military, but spent out in the real world after all this, and finally proven myself to be a real person who can do stuff. Now I can use my experiences from various leisure activities more confidently. That's certainly one thing that I've developed as I've grown older and more mature. I don't really care where my knowledge comes from; it's now mine. One of the things that they do at West Point, and we kind of touched on this last time, was that they're very apt at taking you from a position of comfort where you have a model to work with, so to speak, and then and taking that away. Right, you're in a new thing, and also you're being tested, and also it's dangerous, scary, etc. What you gonna do, man? You got to do it. Uh, I could offer myriad examples of how this is. One of them for me was again, amidst dozens, was survival swimming. Right, I was always what I believe to be a competent swimmer. I could get across a pool, I could tread water for a bit, might tire me out, but being put into a situation where all of a sudden they've raised the stakes to the point where not only are you just trying to get across the pool, but you've got things on you, you've got weights,
Bricks. Yeah.
and you have you're wearing clothes, and all these things. There's waves. It's a culminating experience where like the final two assessments are you drop off in your full camo uniform off a 10 meter down to the pool, and you have to without surfacing, and this is sort of supposed to emulate real life scenarios where if you get downed in an aircraft, right, you can't necessarily just surface immediately because there might be wreckage above you. There might be oil that's also on fire above you at the surface, right? Because that can stay on fire for quite some time, etc. And so you're supposed to swim through various hoops underneath the water, and then finally, and the more hoops you swim through, the more points you get. You finally get to surface, and then you inflate your blouse, right? And so you prove to your instructor by stopping, treading, and putting your hand on your head that you are inflated and you can actually take a rest right now. You're in a position of defense, right? If you're in a defensive position, you're also constantly reinforcing that defensive position somehow. Right? You're always looking at ways to. So say you've got your little patrol base and you're going to hang out here for a little bit. All right, so we need to look at our fields of fire, our little triangle with all the different angles that all the guns are pointed out. We need to make sure that this is actually feasible. Are the guns covering all the different ways that people can come at us? Okay, now that we're hanging out a little bit, let's think about how about we emplace the guns in a little bit of a more defensive position. Let's dig them in a bit, fill out some sandbags, place the sandbags, et cetera, et cetera. We're gonna hang out here a little bit longer. All right, let's consider having actual hard points where people actually can leave and go instead of it just being arbitrarily, okay, you guys are gonna go through this half of or this part of this triangle, right, halfway through. Instead, it's going to be a hard point where we're going to have barbed wire all around us, and now there's only this specific spot where people can come and go. Well, obviously, there's never just one. That's another one. That's another model we can get to. I think I've elaborated enough on this idea of always be reinforcing your positions of defense, and the way that you can apply that. Just think about it. Pretty much any sort of routine that you get into is kind of a position of defense where you can always be. People always try to consider it a thing of optimization, and that might be the wrong way of going about it, right? Because optimization as opposed to what metric, it's best to just consider this a position in your life, right? And consider ways that you can improve it in general, right? Rather than it just being a matter of how much output am I getting out of this position. Was that? Yes.
Just to see if I understood that correctly, would you
Uh,
say then that a problem with going for optimization is that you are not optimizing in light of a specific goal, whereas keeping this positional thing in mind, you have a clear goal, and in this case, the goal is defense, not for the sake of defense, but to build a base from which you can go out and get closer to your strategic goal.
Precisely. That's exactly how I'd sum it up. Yes, exactly. Uh, Very good. So, second model that I was just came to mind. See, this really is all just stalling, so I can come up with more models. um, second one is, well, everyone. It seems in the civilian world, at best, they're thinking in terms of, if you're a really smart, clever guy, you've got a backup plan. But no, you've got to be thinking in terms of, you got four of these suckers, right? You got your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, your PACE, right? For all sorts of things. And
What's the pace?
PACE is an acronym for primary plan, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So
Uh-huh. Okay.
you got four of these for pretty much anything important, right?
Mhm.
Um, this is a great model for, well, anything that could go wrong, which is just about everything. Typically, when I'm trying to, say, for instance, communicate a piece of information to somebody, I typically, if I'm feeling particularly clever at that day and can think this through, I have like four ways to try to talk it to them so that they understand. If I'm trying to uh, come up with I'm in sales, right? Or was before all of this went down. Right? If I'm trying to convey certain information that I believe the potential customer would find compelling, I try to come up with four ways to do it, right? And walk my way down. What's my primary, alternate, and then contingency in case none of those work, and then my emergency. This is my Hail Mary. This guy's probably gonna not go with us, but at least there's one last thing I can talk to him about it. That's the PACE plan, right? Four things, not just a backup plan. Okay, that's for amateurs. No,
And
yeah,
I'm guessing that none of these plans are expected to actually work.
certainly not. And that might also be an effective way of handling things such as failure, right? If you're constantly coming up with four alternatives for things that you're trying for, as the whole point of the plan is not to love the plan or anything, it's to make the thing happen, right? So if you're constantly coming up with plans and alternates to that plan pretty much arbitrarily, you're no longer just holding on so tightly to a certain plan, right?
Mhm.
You just want to make the thing happen.
Right.
And I think that is a much better way of going about things. I see so many people who get really tied up or really attached to this plan that they have. They just
Right.
won't let go, even though it's already failed.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm generally surprised to find out that usually, like, when I see people going out to get a job, they have like one kind of job in mind, or
Hmm.
even like more specifically, like there's one specific job that they have in mind, and if they get it, then that counts as a failure, which is very different from how I do things and have always done things. I think out
Yeah.
of necessity, where like I expect to put like 80 applications out there in all sorts of fields and have most of them fail. Uh, but that's
Yes.
this sort of difference, I think, in attitude, that I feel like people would benefit from having like a broader mind of like what success could be.
Yes. Certainly. Certainly. Because when you set out into the job market, I'm talking not, when necessarily when you're, getting your resume all arranged. I'm thinking about, way back when you're 16 and you're
Hmm.
like, oh, I got to make money at some
Right.
point. What are the things that you're putting inside your head and maybe you should take out, right? What notions which are narrowing your mind are there? I'm not saying it's you in person, like the
Right. Yeah.
impersonal you,
No,
right?
but I'm
Uh,
sure that I have some things. In a way, I would say now that the very concept of having a job is such a thing.
yeah, it's like, hey, I'm here to earn a livelihood
Mhm.
primarily, right? Anything else built up before that, I'm willing to hear, but that's the null hypothesis is I need the money to not die. So what am I going to do to make that happen? That's a great place to look. Alternatively, I see a lot of people who are on this like hashtag grind lifestyle, uh, who are stuck doing the same thing because they've clung on to this idea if I just hit it hard enough, I just keep at it, do the same damn thing over and over again. And they just step back and we're like, maybe if I literally looked up a different website to apply to jobs to,
Right.
this might cut down my search time by you know 10 times what it's currently looking to be, that sort of thing.
Yeah. You're like a martial artist as well, correct?
Yes, back in the day, but I've also just dabbled ever
Mhm.
since
Mhm.
when I was a child. So this is kind of my first uh, with my own body that I had was through the lens of martial arts. Yeah.
I like, so how do you have uh like when you do any sort of live sparring practices, do you feel like there's something equivalent where people kind of try the same thing over and over and over again? I in grappling, this is kind of obvious to me because I like, even as a complete beginner, basically most of my game, I would say, is built around exploiting the fact that I know that someone might sometimes try to do the same thing over and over again because they feel like if it doesn't work the first time, that just means I'm not trying hard enough.
Oh
So
yes,
they just try harder and harder and harder and harder.
definitely. That I've definitely run into this, and I could come up with don't be like Goofus examples of myself. One of them was I went back to my dojo. I think it was after my freshman year, so this was right after civilian college. Went back there just to spar and have some fun while I was around, say hi to everybody. And I was up against. So this is it's not a grappling based scenario. It's just striking
Mhm.
based. And I was sparring against this guy, and he kept floating his kicks at me, just essentially just laying them up there like big fat curveballs, right, or change ups. And I could just see his leg moving ahead of time. Oh, he's about to kick. I can see where it's coming. I can situate my hands. Boom! I've got your leg. But guess what? In a striking based scenario, where when you're just sparring, there's not much to do from here, right?
Mhm.
My instinct, right, is to dump him on his ass, right, and take him down. But that's not the thing we're doing right now. So I kept grabbing his leg, and then the instructor would go, "Oh, well, Ethan, what the hell are you gonna do with that leg now? All right, are you gonna let him go or what? Because he's about to trip and hurt himself if you just keep doing that." This sort of thing. And I was frustrated with this, but I just had to look at it like, well, that's just not what we're here to do, man. All right, you've proven your point. He's floating his kicks. Learn something else, jackass. Like that's one such scenario. Um, other scenarios I've run into in a sparring setting was sparring in combatives at West Point with someone who is a former wrestler, and his whole shtick was to just since he's just very comfortable in general on the ground, it was just to make it as miserable an experience for his opponent as possible, right? But that also opened him up to different techniques and things that were not allowed in wrestling naturally. The whole point of submission,
Guillotines.
guillotines, yes, things of that nature, giving up the entire ass back, etc. um, that were it was a different game. So I chose to spar against him a lot because I would first of all I just enjoyed like being around somebody who was really aggressive.
Yeah, I really admire this sport as well. I'd say if I have to push for a regret, it's not trying
Not
it
doing
out,
wrestling.
not doing it in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're so aggressive.
They're just
Uh,
some mean bastards.
and
Was
yeah, they're just like, I feel like they never, at least in my experience, ever sparring with wrestlers of any sort, it's like they shoot, they come up, they shoot again, like they don't stop. And like for
yes.
me, if I try to take someone down in any way, if it goes anywhere near failure, I don't try it again. Like I just like, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not happening. I'm not gonna
Yes,
expend all this effort. But they definitely have that will, I think.
certainly. Does that allow them to succeed in a half semester course at West Point on combatives? Sometimes, sometimes no. But yes, it is something very admirable, and it's also something that you can use have used against you uh, in a trading setting, which
Yes,
is
yeah.
enjoyable. Yeah. So there's a couple of scenarios. All right. So we're talking about pace plans, and I think we've got that covered. Other models. Oh,
And it doesn't have to be a model at all. It could be really anything that you felt that you took away from your experience there,
okay.
that you're using now.
Just sort of broadening it out. Uh, Perhaps one, and I don't think this is a West Point exclusive, right? Was there they have what is dubbed the Thayer method, which for schooling, which is pretty much just the Socratic method, but instead with homework. It was the whole idea. So essentially, you try to, as a student, prepare in advance all of the instruction for the following lesson toward yourself, right? So you try to teach yourself the lesson, and then you show up with all that knowledge in advance for when the teacher gets there. So instead of that lesson being about the thing and it's being taught, it's about the reconstruction of what you've put together somewhat well, needs some work um, between you. So it's a better use of that person's time instead of him just stating facts. It is instead turned into a dialogue of attempting to bridge the gap between what you already have and where you need to get with a given set of instructions or set of material, right? This was particularly useful in courses where a lot of it was rote in nature. So if you looked at our history or language classes, this was particularly crucial. Say for Chinese, without this concept of the Thayer method, which is basically just self learning. Pretty much anybody who's too curious about the world, they do plenty of that on their own anyway. So it's not that special. But um, yeah, instead of it being that we would just sit there learning vocabulary and stuff, we did that ahead of time. And then before class even started, the expectation was we were sitting there practicing our character strokes on the boards in advance, and our teacher would be going making the rounds and also yelling at you if it's really clear that you had not learned your stuff yet. Um, and then we would take a quiz, 5-minute quiz, just to reinforce the learning being taught and putting us on our toes. And then we would, instead of again spending that time going over the little text blurbs that every foreign language class has, it's like, hello, how are you? And then it gets more advanced as you go along. We would instead practice ourselves, right? Our teacher would call on us and have us read them out, and we practice on a pronunciation and get into really in-depth things about how you actually speak this language that we would not be able to get into in a 50 minutes per day sort of setting otherwise. So that's one such way that is applied. How to apply it now? Well, now I'm really cognizant of when I need to put into the work into whatever I'm learning, right? Some things you can just dive into, you grab the book on, oh, I want to learn about finite and infinite games, right? I went and read that book, right? You read the thing, you're like, yeah, I think I get the concept, but certain things really do require that amount of just kind of rote, self building up in this field of knowledge, and then you can go back and try to find either some body or some thing, some piece of material content. There's a lot of great stuff on the internet. You might be familiar with the internet these days. It's pretty good stuff. You can get what you need to bridge the gap from there, right? And that's one such thing I've learned to apply.
It
Oh,
sounds to me like this Thayer method
yeah.
uh, was a way of getting students actively involved in their own education, which I feel is a thing that is often generally lacking in our education system, where you, I think, for the typical class in definitely public education, you walk into class and you basically just memorize what you're told, um,
Yes.
for a test. And it sounds to me like what y'all learned over there was that you can only learn if you are teaching yourself, and a teacher is sort of a guide.
Oh, certainly. And to cover this sort of topic seems a bit gauche at this point, but still needs saying, man.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't seem like it's taken
Right, yeah.
to the point that it needs to be. So, hey, I'll keep beating that drum. I'll be that guy. You know,
Yeah,
it's
no,
important.
like I mean that's sort of what sort of the drum I'm actually beating here as well, because
Yeah.
like with this project, we you can go memorize everything you need to memorize about tactics today. Like
Oh, yeah.
that's it. Like, I give you like 30 terms, and I don't think you will find anything outside of that in any military manual. Those, like, outside of like 30 basic terms. But without the active self participation, none of that really means much, I think.
I agree. You have memorized, in essence, worthless facts. Uh, Look, man, people have been fighting each other long before those terms came about, and just because you know them doesn't mean you're good at it yet. Of
Yeah.
course. Uh, it's just a way to easier way to refer to things which are, as you point out, learned through engagement, right? Through practice, of course. Yes, and I think that's a very important thing to get across to people. Um, see, and I think we kind of touched on this when we were talking via text. Was that there's this idea that all of this is guarded off. All this information is guarded off, and really is not.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
it's, it's all strictly declassified. Like, it's all there for anybody to learn. It's just not grouped together well. It's not grouped together well while you're there, right?
Right. Yeah. Like it's
So
so I feel like I know a lot more now outside than I ever did when I was in. Like it
really,
was all over the place. Like
yes,
the information was all over the place, and people would tell you to read things, or they would teach you things, but it was like every instructor had their own paradigm. Um,
yes, that's a great way to put it.
uh, which is really useful, but also because it forces you to think for yourself in a way. But it also, to me, I feel like, the classic difference in packaging is everything you needed for an Apple computer was out there.
Mm,
You could have probably, like, anyone in that space, right, could have put together a personal computer eventually by the like 90s. um, like any company could have come around and did that, but Apple's thing was apparently, like, one of the things was packaging, like putting it all
okay,
together in a way
right.
that's easy for everyone to access. Um, and I definitely have trouble with that. Like like personally, I feel like it feels weird to package things for people.
Yes, it
um,
does. It feels like you're trying to sell something.
exactly. That's exactly what it feels like, and I I'm beginning to now only realize that it is very useful, and that the packaging removes a lot of attention that it would take to, like, go through all these manuals and figure out what would actually work for you, and figure out how to translate that to a environment where you can test it out. Um, so, I think that the classic self-defense argument, like for people who teach self-defense, is like, oh, in a real fight, they would gouge your eyes out or something like that. And they kind of use that, I think, as an excuse not to get into some sort of situation that would begin to train things. And this is the equivalent, I think, of putting things on the market. So, every time you put a thing on a market, it's like a sort of bet, or for science experimentation and putting things in a lab. And in a lot of ways, I think free play exercises, tactical exercises, where the the result can go either way is a sort of lab. Um, and I don't know if there is an easy way for people to look at all these manuals and say, this is how I can make a like my very own lab at home with my group of friends, from looking at these manuals.
Oh, I highly doubt there is. Otherwise, you know, our instructors would have been paid what they were. You know,
Right. Yeah.
that's that's a great point. Great way to put about it. One such way, I think, is, and you guys have really stumbled on something here, is I won't say not by stumble. I mean, you guys had a great
Yeah.
idea
No,
here.
stumble.
Yeah,
I
stumble.
stumble on
Uh,
all things I
sure.
come
Yeah,
across.
that's an interesting thing. I was listening to a video and somebody was describing their creative process on something, and they were talking about, oh, I was going to this, but then like all of a sudden I thought in my head, what if I just copy pasted this and put it up here, and then I clicked, and then all of a sudden I was listening to this, I was like, oh, sure. And he's like, now if you haven't done anything creative, this probably like makes me sound like a hack fraud. And I was like, that's right.
Yeah.
People really do think like that. They're
Right.
like, you think they just like come up with this stuff, like just big brain it right off the top. No, man, it's a weird thing, you know,
Right. Yeah. No,
that you
I've
just stumble through.
definitely never. I can't say I have ever successfully sat down, decided to do something, and then done it.
No.
Like all the best things just fall into my lap.
And it's not a matter of, would that even be better? Like, I don't even know what I'd be able to come across, even if I was 2 times smarter, 10 times smarter, would it
Right.
be better than what you could come across by, come together with by just being adaptive and, to your own thought processes and adding things together that were previously disjointed? I doubt it, you know.
Yeah. No,
That's
I don't think so. I like if I look at the history of innovation and things like that, it seems fairly clear to me that we work kind of like evolution in the sense like there's all
a little
this
bit.
seemingly random stuff, right? That just
Yes.
happens in this time period. And then later on, you stumble onto something. And then after that, years, decades later, as time goes on, you look back and you say, yes, that was completely planned. There was some sort of linear process, and all this other stuff was unnecessary. A classic example is like Isaac Newton's alchemy, right? Like,
Yes.
oh, he didn't need to study all that dumb woo shit in order to get to where he was. But
What
I
do you
think
mean need? You know, it was part of his brain when he was making the good stuff, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
yes, precisely. That's, I learned a bit about alchemy. I went back to the Hermetic Museum and I've been perusing it ever since. You know, just because you just add stuff to your brain to see what happens. But this is all big digression. What I was saying was, hey, but that's good too. What I was
Yeah,
saying was
that's part
this
of
whole
our
idea of just
process.
straight up filming this stuff.
Uh-huh.
These free play exercises would be fantastic. Frankly, I would love, as compromising and emotionally difficult as it would be to see them, like my own from back then. But none of
Absolutely.
this was filmed, so unfortunately, no. But if I had, I'd probably learn 10 times more just going over them than I learned during them. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably so. I was too
Right.
damn tired to learn too much, so
Yeah, no,
that'd be good.
I would totally film everything continuously if there was like a data solution for that was affordable. I think.
Yes, that is unfortunate, but just this idea of free play exercise in general would
Mhm.
be great, um, because there really isn't much in the manuals on any of this,
Mhm.
because it's not something that you can manualize, but you can at least make case studies, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Here's one way that we went about putting together one of these exercises.
Yep.
Did I lose you there? Hey, Ray.
Yes.
You
Yes.
there?
Yep. I'm here.
Yes. Hi. Okay. Yeah. So here's one way to go about doing one of these exercises that we did, right? You're not going to be able to do the same one as us, but here's what it is. Yes, that is one fantastic way of getting this information across. And then maybe other collaborators go out and do their own, document their own, and then through an induction, kind of rebuild something that's a little bit intuitive, not that intuitive in the armed forces, is these training exercises. Yeah, none of, it's all done on the fly there too. It's just all intuition, it's all induction from just like how these sorts of things go about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it does seem to be like something that's in the, I guess a word that people throw around is metis, like in the
Yeah.
cultural memory of each unit
Yes.
that trains things. And so there's all these unspoken little things that they do that never makes its way. I mean, and I think more recently, a lot of those things have been making their way into manuals, but
Sure.
also the lion's share of it does not. Um, and I guess I do have like a secret hope uh, for this that people do look at this and say, oh, we can do this as well, and then they film their stuff and they upload it, and then we all like exchange information.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, because I feel like no matter how smart you are or how experienced you are, and I am neither in the conventional sense of the term, um, you you always think better as a collective. Um, people like to harp on groupthink and group biases and whatnot, but I think ultimately our biggest inventions are collective inventions.
Oh yes. I think here's my little pet theory. All of this group bad, you know, association going on in the discourse is because it's just a bunch of people talking around bullshit is why. You know, if they actually went out and did something together, they'd have a whole different notion of what a group is, right?
Right.
Because
So exactly, because then you have something to channel the intention to word.
yes,
Um, uh, it's just like the sports community. I feel like is generally ahead of the sports science community, because you have a competition to keep you honest. You have the ground.
right. You
Really.
have something you're making literal reality checks all the time.
Mhm.
That's one way I've started to look at things, especially with military strategy and going back and like reading. I did this a ton while I was there. I did it a ton before. I like war. I like
Mhm.
fighting. So I read this stuff. I'm just thinking about all these different complexities that theorists have built into various accounts of historical battles, and I've realized I've looking back at these like nah, you got to cut a lot, almost all of that out, man. It wasn't, complex tactics, big brain genius tactics, chaotic battle. No, it was simple plans, simple battle, right?
Right. Yep.
That's what it was. And the commanders' jobs at the time was they were rushed around making sure that the simple plan kept on going without going
Right.
crazy.
Yep.
Right? And that was the whole idea.
Yeah.
Um,
The moment you try
and
to play like what do they call it, five-dimensional chess or whatever,
yeah,
like that's the moment you basically lose. Like you,
yes. No one's gonna know what you're talking about. For
right.
one, you go to your subordinate commanders, and there you go, dude. I have no way to tell my centurion or my sergeant what the hell you're saying. So
Right.
like, you need to turn around, LT, and
Right.
figure out something else to do. Like,
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna tell you. Yeah. So going back into that, I was just like, yeah, you need to make when you're in these situations, you're in a sports situation, you're in a fight situation, you're making literal checks with reality that keep you grounded, right? And and I think a lot of uh, what a group stands to gain by existing is through making these checks together, right? All of the most successful groups I've been a part of were of this sort. All the ones that I've avoided are of the other sort that never do stuff with each other, right? Because it's just too easy. You just sit there and lays about talking. Of course, it's going to go wrong. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Um,
like, there's definitely a place for that kind of discourse. I think it's a
sure.
sort of group masturbation, and group masturbation is a generally good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
However, uh, it
But
definitely serves a different purpose, I think, from checking on reality.
oh, certainly. And I suppose this is a model that I've learned maybe while I was at West Point was uh, when you are trying to shift the window, right, of discourse. You don't want to necessarily show your hand and be like, here's where I want things to be, way that we think about things. If it's over here and I want it to be over here, what I want to do is go all the way over here. Like, no, this all sucks. It needs to be all the way over here. Hello. And then that gets it over here.
Right.
For instance, in Spring, I live in Houston. Spring's a suburb of Houston, right? And in Houston in general, there's so many pickup trucks on the streets.
Ford F-150s usually, right?
Yes.
F-150s.
They're a damn nuisance.
Yeah.
And everybody who drives them is a moron. So instead of it being like, I wish there were less pickup trucks, I say, everyone who owns a pickup truck is an idiot. And I hope they all get their licenses revoked and their cars scrapped. And then so anybody who I run into, they're like, maybe I shouldn't get one. And it seems like at least this crazy man thinks it's a shameful thing to do. They'll remember that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's how you get less pickup trucks. Of course,
or at least
I'm well aware of all of the utilities that a pickup truck grants. Of course, that's one such model. So that similarly with this group mentality thing, I'm the crazy man over here being like, no, you literally should not speak to people unless you're doing something, you know, because this is the default all the way over here. It's like all groups are knitting circles, you know, like, without the knitting.
Right. Yes. Yeah. The knitting would keep them more honest.
Right. Exactly. So I got to be the guy, or at least I have felt the need to be the guy over here, being like, don't talk to people unless you're doing something. You know? So that's the idea. And so a lot of this knowledge, I'm really curious to see how it will end up being perceived and used, because all these orthodoxies that you know are in these manuals and stuff will be perceived and used from people totally foreign to any organizations that's used them previously in their lives, right? I'm really curious to see, and I hope that they engage with them in a useful way, because do I think the organizations that I've been a part of that have used them exactly perfectly well? No, right? I think there's more to add, more to learn, more to organize. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like one benefit I've seen about like going back and not just reading the manuals that I had to read or that I chose to read that were part of the organizations that I was in, but of parallel organizations like, you know, like the New Zealand Armed Forces or the Australian Armed Forces, the British Armed Forces, other branches, the Marines, Navy, and so on that I was not involved with, was seeing how everyone conveys a lot of similar information in just such different ways, and how I feel like you can tell when an organization has a lot of bloat and when it doesn't.
Oh yes.
By what their manuals look like.
Oh, for certain. It's readily apparent. You can learn a lot about an organization without speaking to a single member or anything, just through these manuals. Absolutely. Yep. And it can be a lot of fun, making fun of them, but also sometimes you get intimidated and you're like, wow, they come up with this stuff.
Right. Like I look, so I'm going to shit on the Army because I was in the Army.
Yeah, by all means, man.
Like I read the Marine manuals and then I read the Army manuals and I'm like, are we retarded? Like what why does it take us 7 pages to say something the Marines figured out how to say in one paragraph? In a simple, clear way that like almost anyone can understand.
Well, you've kind of said it exactly, because, well, they said it in a paragraph, man. You got your metrics backwards. I want 7 pages, you know.
Right.
You really got to elaborate on this, you know, show all we got.
Yeah, because you reward people for being like, I don't know, I feel like the Army is in some ways the writing is stuck in like early 90s business writing. Or something like that. So they're like, we have to show that we're smart enough to use all these big words.
It's the big words thing, but it's also just being able to like expound, to be able to expound, right? If I can take a concept and really, you know, get into every little
intricacy down into it. Yeah.
What was the quote from some guy? It was like some civilian, you know, ex-Army contractor. He was like, look, we're taking 6th grade reading level. That's what the ASVAB requires people, giving them equipment that's supposed to be used at the 4th grade level, and then we give them a manual written at the kindergarten level to use it, right? And
Right.
that's the whole premise. That's what we're doing here. Let's not sugarcoat it.
I think that the manuals would improve if they were written at the kindergarten level, and in fact,
Absolutely.
that's certainly what I intend to do with the notes that I'll seed on the database. Is that so? Every tactical, like everything about tactics, so not the examples or the specific techniques, but the overall overview. I would like to try and write it at the kindergarten level, because it is kindergarten stuff, or it should.
Yes. It's I think that's the right way to go about it. You know, we're trying to do something here, not write a bunch, right? Those are two mutually exclusive goals typically. So yeah, what was it? Oh, my physics teacher back in junior year, some about, oh, he wanted us to write like an instruction manual to like some, I think we were building a catapult. He said if you could write an instruction manual without using any words at all, I would give you bonus points. That's another thing that I've learned to value a lot.
Oh,
especially
like Lego manuals.
Yes.
I seem to recall that Lego manuals were particularly good at this.
Yes, it's very, very pictographic. I've come to value this a great deal. Within these manuals too, when I can get like a nice little diagram picture, and then all of a sudden just goes, just all years turned all at the same time. The old brain, it's really, really simple and refreshing. It's almost a pleasurable experience, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like a good pictographic manual is one of like the heights of pleasure.
It really is. It's a good time. That's quite the sentence there. But yeah, you're right. I agree. And hey, talking about a lot of stuff, yeah, it is a bit silly. That's part of the fun. I mean, everybody says this. I never laughed more than I did while I was in there. You know.
Absolutely. I definitely learned to laugh at everything you can possibly laugh at.
Yes, because you know, feels good. That's basically it.
Yeah. A lot of times, I would say, like after like long field training exercises and whatnot, I did not know why I was laughing, but I would be like laughing hysterically, like especially like after like
Oh,
digging
yeah.
for 7 hours or something like that. You're just like, you just made me laugh.
I remember coming back with my buddy. You know, like you got your battle buddy, right? We get back and we're just like sitting out in an open field after like a 3-day or whatever, and we're just so sleep deprived. You ever seen Team America World Police?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we kept quoting like the Matt Damon puppet going Matt Damon at each other back and forth, and we were just totally dysfunctional. Like our squad leader came down, it was like she was a female, and she was like, what the hell are you guys doing? You know, like, what is happening? It was amazing, but we just could not be stopped. We would just go, hey, Matt Damon. We would just be dying again. But yes, it is very much a place of laughter, which I very much appreciate. And just reliving it a bit and hopefully getting to pass on some knowledge. It's apparently been an enjoyable time as well. Been doing our fair share of laughing. So
Yeah.
that's good. So we're on the right track.
I guess your leader in that situation was asking, what are you guys doing, as if like that does not serve a purpose. But I'm definitely convinced that that serves a very clear purpose to deal with difficult environments, and also to build unit cohesion.
Certainly. All the absurdities, they really stack up in their own little microcosm with these people. It was more that she was just so weirded out because we had no joke to explain or anything.
Right. Yeah.
It's just us saying Matt Damon at each other. But yes, certainly from the outside looking in, it does look like it's purposelessness or just like simple coping, as they say. But no, it's got its own reason d'etre, as it were, and it's hard. It's not really something that we've come to explain that well, but yeah, just chalk it up to unit cohesion. You know, so one of the many ways that you get to it. But yeah, it's a good time.